I was in second grade and I told a friend of mine. It turned out that she was the imam's daughter. First was atheism, and it appealed to me because he was like, you know, we have this in our tradition, right? Like, we have Islamic versions of this. I had a completely out of body experience. I left my body and I was hovering overhead. I was like, what's going on? Put me back inside. I don't want none of this. I'm not gonna lie, my spiritual journey has been messy, confusing, and at times downright painful. But if I've learned anything, it is that transformation doesn't come in a straight line, and it's built through faith, questions, and habits. So today I'm gonna pull back the curtains to share the raw, unfiltered story of how I went from completely lost to being so aligned that nobody can tell me nothing, and the habits that helped me get there. I'll dive into how I struggled with identity, exploring different belief systems, and finally building the habits that transformed my life. I was born and raised in Ethiopia and born into a Muslim family for generations. I attended Catholic school for a few years and then later went to Islamic school. All of these experiences shaped me in ways that I didn't fully understand until much later. The consistent pull and push between different ideologies, mixing in with personal struggles, led me to questioning everything about who I was and what I believed in. Looking back, there's a lot of social conditioning. We come into this world not knowing anything. It's our parents, our teachers, and our friends. And now we have TV shows and movies that are molding our worldview. My personal experiences and close friends and family taught me to be very wary of religious people. I know, right? It's crazy. I still vividly remember this one moment, and it's very embarrassing, so bear with me here, okay? I was in second grade and I told a friend of mine that I thought a boy was cute or that I liked him. And it turned out that she was the imam's daughter. And she told the teacher. Now you have to understand this was in the 1990s in Ethiopia, and I was publicly humiliated in front of class. What that means is they hit you with something. And that experience taught me to not trust people, to stay quiet, and to keep it to myself, especially when it comes around religious people. Also, I moved to America a few months after 9/11. I was about 10 years old. I didn't speak a word of English. I was navigating the world that I was in, and it just didn't seem to know people that looked like me or believed in things that I believed in. So by high school, I wasn't visibly Muslim. It wasn't allowed in my family. We just did not do that. But there was a lot of trauma from misinformation and fear of real life, right? Like, not in my name, not in my name. This has a lot of issues. These are a lot of social conditionings that are causing us to act in certain ways when it comes to the habit loop. But when I turned 18 and started applying for colleges, I worked really hard to get to where I was, and I was surrounded with a lot of smart people around me. They were getting into Ivy League, and I was wondering, what is going on? What does it mean to be smart? What does it mean to be successful? To have faith? What is my faith? Who am I? I was having a whole identity crisis. But honest to God, I'm so thankful about this, because looking back, I'm grateful that it happened when it did, not a lot later, because those questions were the seed for my spiritual awakening that were really crucial for making the changes that I needed so that I can become the person I wanted to be. And to be completely transparent, because fakeness is not helping nobody. Everybody's acting a certain way, but behind closed doors, they're doing something else. These are the three paths that stood out to me the most and why I liked them. First was atheism, and it appealed to me because it didn't demand blind belief in something that didn't make sense to me. And because religion can be a headache, and it often is, trying to prove something or trying to understand the unseen, especially when you know that there are so many tainted information and you don't know how to clarify it, this was very appealing to me. I do know now, looking back, how this idea even came into my worldview, because atheism is such a weird concept, especially for an immigrant, right? Like, where do you learn that this is even a concept? And this is a huge point for assessing your habits, which are rooted in what you're exposed to. So for me, it came from TV shows. I used to watch Bones so much. The show Bones was my favorite TV show, and 9 seasons of something or reading a good book that really makes sense to you is actually reprogramming your subconscious mind. It is changing your beliefs and your identity from the inside out. So you see a lot of people who believe a certain way but act a different way, and you're like, oh, they look this way, but why do they think this way? It's because of this. Because of the media and how it's working and what we're being exposed to, you're able to change your mind subconsciously, even though you have never been exposed to it for generations, if you were living in the small group that you had back home. The second one was Buddhism, and I loved how it focused on mindfulness and the lack of dogma, and it really resonated deeply with me. There was no do it this way or do it that way, understand a foreign language, pray X times a day. It was appealing. But later on in life, I realized this was whitewashed when I traveled to Sri Lanka and actually saw Buddhists. And this was accessibility due to being American, right? Like, this is everywhere because they went overseas, they got the ideas, they brought it back here, and they made it palatable for us. But it was really going to Sri Lanka and seeing how the natives acted and what they believed in, going into their temples, seeing all of of these idols that they had that really shifted my mindset. They also don't have a robust religious structure. So for instance, they say you can't kill, but when there's war, anything goes. So that was really standing out for me. So when I came back from Sri Lanka and I saw how everything was going, I was more focused on monks. I didn't really read the average people's understanding or what foreigners said about it. I just focused on the root message that they had in order to learn more. And why I like Buddhists even to this day is the fact that they were excluded from the system. They were living in the mountains, so they didn't have a lot of foreign interference. And Islamically speaking, they focus mostly on the la ilaha part, and I just add the illallah in order to understand this. But I learned from everybody to this day. I will not keep myself small. And the third one was, of course, Islam. Islam felt different, it felt familiar, and the theology is extremely pure. One God, no baggage, that's it. But it also felt distant, secondhand. I was always learning from somebody else, and it was buried under layers of cultural practices and judgments and a lot of people and society, and it was a lot. Being aware of my social conditionings, I made a deal when I was 18 and with Allah, and I said, I'm gonna dive into Islam fully, and I'm gonna do it on my own terms. No more he said, she said, especially as a kid in America who was hearing all of this stuff from media and learning how it has an influence. But I also said, if this doesn't work out, I'm out. I'm gonna make this so pure and unconditional, and I'm gonna be here 100%. Crazy, because to this day, I'm like, I'm done. I understand. I'm still here. I'm not leaving. I don't need any more proof. Please leave me alone. But let me tell you, the journey was not easy. I spent so many years questioning, falling down, confused, from praying to wearing hijab to understanding the Quran, especially as a woman. It was a deep, deep journey, and I realized that I didn't have the foundational knowledge, and that's why I went to study in depth. So college was a great time. I had an amazing time. It was that whole thing of assume steady state. We do this in engineering. I was so focused on self-discovery, and I had a great support system of friends. But reality hit as soon as I left college. I questioned everything from hijab and finding a job. I hated not being a hijabi because that was the ultimate decision, and you can watch the hijab video if you want to learn more about that. But then I realized it was the system, it was the laws and standards that were being created by a group of people who were in power. And unfortunately, not just being Muslim, but being a Black Muslim who is a woman, who is an immigrant, I was getting the short stick of it. Noticing that there was way more to it than I could understand, I studied my journey on Islamic thought. I did it for 2 years. I took all of the classes, and I inhaled everything that they said. I inhaled it. So while the average person was probably just there to do it, I was there because I didn't understand anything, and I kept on going until I deeply understood it. And it was that high risk, high return. You know, I put in money. I spent a lot of years. I was working full time and studying also. So it was a lot. I did a lot, but it really helped me finally make sense of it all. And TikTok and how it's resonating with a lot of people, and this version of the account on YouTube that I'm talking about is a testament to that. But even though now I had the intellectual side of it, I understood it conceptually and with the values of it, there was something that was still missing. That was the emotional, mental, and spiritual side of it. So what was happening in my life at this time was social media was consuming my thoughts and my time. I was married, working, I wanted kids, I wanted a house. So the external influences tripled more than the relaxed state that I had in college. So there was a lot of weight happening on my life, and I didn't know how to actually work with all of that. So I deeply wanted to taste the sweetness of inner peace. I wanted that so bad. The only source I could find that had a lot of information on this was the Buddhist. So you'll see on my Knowledge Hub that I have a lot of books and resources that I've read when it comes to teachings of detachment. So I learned about meditation practices and how to actually create that mental peace, because I realized that there was something inside that wasn't right. This is all an internal experience. How you feel, what you think is something that you have control over. You just need practice over it. And note, as somebody who is conservatively Muslim, who is practicing, what they have done, what Buddhists have done, is mastered la ilaha, which means no God. So they work on the the detachment aspect of it. Because of systematic advantages that they had, because of situation, they lived in mountainous areas, which means they had less conquests and they had less interference by outsiders, while Africans and people from the Middle East can't say the same. So they had the ability of preserving it. So I just add the illallah part, which is accept Allah, and then Muhammadur Rasulullah part, which is he is the messenger of Allah. So that's how I make sense of everything, and that's what actually my husband helped me explain that. So at this time, my husband is seeing this and he's so confused. He's like, why are you reading these books? Why are you going into these lectures? And I was constantly listening to it, and he was like, you know, we have this in our tradition, right? Like, we have Islamic versions of this. And I was like, I'm willing and able to hear you out, but I'm not finding it. Every time I'm looking, I can't find it. So he ended up finding a retreat in Pennsylvania, and we went to it. And when I tell you I've never seen so many white women praying and chanting La ilaha illallah in my life, this was a complete culture shock for me. What had happened is a man from the Shadili Tariqa, which is Sufi, which is Muslim, but you know, people love to label everything. So he came from Palestine, settled, and he taught and had a lot of people who were white women mostly who converted and were practicing. So he's extremely conservative and has all of the conservative Islamic teachings, but the type of people he was attracting or how he talked to them was that. So when I went there, it was really interesting how conservative they were, like praying 5 times a day, waking up early morning. Like I got so sick, my throat, like chanting over and over again, all of these dhikrs. I was like, whoa. But something really interesting happened. We had this session where we were learning about the nafs and like waswas and how that works. And we had a dhikr session in which we chant La ilaha illallah. I've been trying to figure out as to why I was able to maximize the ability of the dhikr. And it's because of all of the lessons that I learned from Buddhists. So they know more about the techniques and the strategies. And I learned this by reading a lot of books. So at first, nothing happened to me, but I focused and I used these techniques that I was learning from all of these books. And I practiced meditation on my own, so I had a completely out of body experience. I left my body and I was hovering overhead. I was like, what's going on? Put me back inside. I don't want none of this. And I completely freaked out. And I panicked, I cried, I was crying in front of everybody. I had to run out. And the lady was following me out. It was a mess. I've never experienced something like that. But it's very interesting after I calmed down, I've never felt that kind of love in my life, of acceptance, of connection. Like it was such a strange experience. What followed after that was going to conferences and harassing teachers. And they looked at me like I was crazy. They were like, go to the person who taught you. They should be able to teach you these things. And I'm like, yeah, but they're dead though. I can't find them though, but I can't travel. They can't help me. They just look at me like I'm crazy. And this is purely a systematic problem. And so I understand a lot of people who are confused and they're doing a lot of self-studying because of systematic problems, such as a lot of scholars are dead. The mainstream is not the one that focuses on these little nuances of spirituality. So it's a lot more harder, and I personally don't blame them, but I'm tired. I want the answers and I'm sick of asking people. So what was actually the solution? What happened after that is that I went back to the basics, the Quran and the Sunnah. Those are my teachers. So for 6 years, I've been building habit systems to act as a maintenance job. How do I get and keep that feeling that I had during that meditation session? And you have to understand, when you're in congregation, and maybe this is why some people say it's forbidden, is because it actually increases its power, because you're like vibing off of people's, it's intense. The spiritual side is extremely intense, but I wanted to bring that feeling without the intensity of it. I realized that it was a blessing to experience that, but I needed it to be a slow, gradual increment. And I think I was able to taste it because, you know, to see that there's another side, to see that there's more to this religion. Like, you're not just gonna, you know, just master it overnight. And I love having that challenge, but it was too intense and it's too extreme for my level. I did not study under scholars. I need training, but I don't have that. But if I did something little by little, if I took it slowly and, you know, a steady path, then there would be that compound effect where I would be able to attain that level of spiritual freedom if I kept on working on it. So these are the habits that I have, which are really important, and this comes more from the Islamic side. For the past 10 years, I've been doing Wird al-Latif. These are my favorite set of du'as that I read on a daily basis. I don't do the whole thing that the way they do it within, you know, like the retreats. I don't do it like 7 times, 10 times. I do that once a week while I listen to the audio, but I do this every single day. And that has been able to be a protection, a cleansing for me. Another thing that I have is a morning routine, soul habits that I do every single morning. I do tadabbur of the Quran, I do my du'as, I do my dhikr intentionally, and it doesn't take that long. On top of that, I've added sunnahs like fasting once a month. So this has helped me a lot, tremendously with my mindset, as well as dhikr that's not hard. So this is why I focus mostly on, you know, meditation. I talk about meditation because meditation is easier. It's just cleansing. But with dhikr, you're adding something on top of it. You're adding illallah. So that can make it a lot more heavier. And I personally, maybe because I engage with the Quran on a regular basis, my heart can't hold it, or it's not at the stage where it can. So dhikr has a way heavier impact on me. I don't feel comfortable talking about the spiritual side of it. It's best if you have a scholar, but if you're self-taught, and many of us are going to be that in this day and age, then you need to go gradually and you need to go back to the original sources in order to do that. So over the years, I've learned that habits are the foundation for any spiritual journey, because what you're doing is that you're purifying it. You're taking yourself into account, muhasabah, right? You're taking yourself into account. So you need to stay consistent with the habit. And it's not just any habit, right? Exercising, meditating, it's the intention behind the habit. And it's a lifelong journey as well. Until the day that I die, I'm not going to stop. A lot of people make it conditional. Don't make it conditional, make it unconditional. You're doing this because this is life. This is your lifestyle. And the major thing, because I am extremely busy, I have a lot of people depending on me. I have 2 toddlers, I am married, I have the house, I'm trying to do business. It's a lot going on. So the whole idea with habits is that don't overwhelm yourself with massive changes. It is literally those small and consistent habits, like the Prophet ﷺ has taught us, that is actually going to change you. But you have to be extremely strategic, because this world is not designed for your success, my love. It's not. I've noticed that. And that's why I focus on habit systems exclusively. And it's not just the spiritual side, but your mental health, what's going on with your physical health, what's going on with your finances, with your relationships. It's a balancing act. And that's why I've created my habit systems bundle, which takes you through everything. So if you're really serious about this, make sure to check it out. I have a free version and a paid version. But until next time, make sure to check out my other content, and peace.